I'm excited to share as we talk in the lab of, it's talking to students, yes, it's learning about advising principles and activities, but it's also being able to figure out how do you talk to faculty and how do you talk to parents and how do you talk to providers and partners overseas? How do you do marketing and recruitment? How do you think about applications and what are important things there? How do you do event planning? How do you factor into risk management? I mean, there's so many different components, evaluation and assessment. And so really my hope is that by participating in the lab, you're coming away with an understanding of and some tips and tools about all the different things that go into the fundamentals of advising.
Welcome back to the Inside Study Abroad podcast. I'm really excited today to bring to you this amazing man, Jason Kinnear, my good friend, and also our newly, appointed, inaugurated, whatever, instructor for our study abroad advising lab that is coming in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to learn more about that, we'll have links down in the show notes, or you can just go to insidestudyabroad.com/labs. But Jason, he is a homie I've known, I feel like forever, but I'm so excited to have you on the show. And I'm so excited for you to be teaching this lab because you have such an amazing breadth of experience within the field and all sorts of different types of institutions. And I feel like, to toot your horn a little bit, I mean, he is the associate. Okay, I forgot already your title is. It's right in front of me too. He's the Interim Associate Dean of Study Abroad and Exchanges at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Go Tar Heels, which is a very fancy and I feel like very professional title. And then I feel like we've known each other. I feel like we've known each other so long where I'm just like, oh my God, you're a big kid. Like,
I know, isn't it crazy?
So let's start with you telling everyone your international education story. How did you find yourself in this career path?
Absolutely. Well, so from listening to the podcast and knowing you for a long time, my path was getting started was very similar to yours. I'm from a small town in Southwest Missouri. So yay, Midwest, first gen college student who had no idea, no guidance about going to college or what I was going to be doing, what I wanted to do with my life. I liked history and things, political science when I was in high school. And so I just thought, that might be an interesting thing to do. But as I got into college, I got more involved, but I went to a small engineering school. So being a history and political science major was a little out of the norm there, but we didn't have a study abroad office. Study abroad was never a thing to me as I was in college. And until my mentor, who was an art professor there, came up to me one day on the quad and said, hey, I'm going to London to lead this study abroad program this summer. Do you want to go? And I'm a senior. I'm about to graduate in May. And this is probably in like February or March. And I'm like, yes, sure, of course. And so that's what kicked me off and got me started. And, I had this thought of going to grad school, going into politics or studying political science and becoming a professor. And I was over in England and it just blew me away. I had all the proverbial aha moments of international ed that we hope that our students have.
Yeah.
I did an internship in Parliament while I was there, and I took a theater class and saw about 40 plays in 6 weeks, and it was just stunning. And a person I met there who was my resident director, who's still a good friend to this day in the field, we were at a pub one night and he's like, tell me about yourself and what do you do? And just kind of get to know each other. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing with my life. And tell me about this. How did you get this gig? And he told me all about higher education, administration, and study abroad and all these different things. And I came back from study abroad and I dropped out of my master's in political science and applied and got into a ed leadership and higher ed administration program. And my very first day in my master's class, I learned about an assistantship in the study abroad office. And I was the only person in the entire master's program that had studied abroad. So I got the position. So it was like super Like, here's fate leading you down the road.
Serendipity. Oh, I love that story. So you were at what was then known as Rolla, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's now the Missouri University in Science and Technology.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I did my master's at the University of Northern Colorado.
Okay.
In Greeley, Colorado. And while I was there, I was just really super lucky enough that the National NAPSA conference was going to be in Denver that year. And my supervisor, who was the dean of students, was on the planning committee. And so I got to meet all these people from international ed and got asked to be on the local arrangements committee. So here I am, a master's student, don't know anything about international ed. And I jumped right in and was part of the planning committee of this massive 10,000 people conference. But it also allowed me to meet people from all these different Colorado schools. I got to meet providers. I got to meet international education across the field, international missions, ISSS, study abroad. And that allowed me to do informational interviews, which I know you and Sam talk about all the time in your podcasts and stuff. So I did interviews in Boulder, I did interviews in Denver, I did interviews in Fort Collins. And that helped open the door for me to get a job at Colorado State after I finished my master's degree. And I haven't looked back. I was in ISSS for 2 years and then have been in study abroad for over 20 since then. And have just had a blast and climbed the ladder. Started out as a grad assistant and then as an advisor and hopped my way up the field.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I want to go back to a few things you said there. So first, I think one, that the fact that you got engaged locally, I know it was a national conference, but technically you were like on the local, you were working with the local people, the local other administrators and international educators, which I think is something that sometimes, especially nowadays, I feel people just like, well, they want to leap right ahead to like, I'm, a big shot at a big national conference, or it's like, I got a job with this big national organization. And sometimes it's like, that's actually not maybe the most valuable. And it's such a much bigger leap to get involved. And like, this was later in my career, but like, I mean, I only know you because when I moved to South Dakota, I was like, I guess I don't know anybody here. I'd never really worked in that region with my previous positions and never lived there. So I was like, I really know no one here. And so I was like, maybe I'll get involved in the regional stuff. And like, just by the sheer time, it was like perfect time and skill set because I was like kind of a techie, which I'm not, but like in that particular group of people, I was a techie. Love you all, but it was like funny that I was the techie. And I feel like I made such great friendships and relationships with people over time. John Wilkerson, Jody Pritt. Jody Pritt is going to be one of the other instructors for the lab. She's going to be teaching the International Students and Scholars Lab. And so I really think that like those local experiences at a smaller scale, I know you were doing a national conference, but it could have been a regional conference too. Those types of experiences are super valuable. And those connections you make by like achieving a common goal together, that's not your job, is so, so valuable. So if you're going to take any like tips away so far from Jason's story, I would say that is like a big one, that he got involved locally first before he was like, let me be the chair of the education abroad knowledge community. You got to kind of work your way towards those things. I really loved that. The other thing I love is that your story about sitting in the pub with the faculty member and being like, so, I want your job, which I feel like a lot of international educators can relate to. We've had those conversations with people who are like, I want to do what you do. What were some, could you tell us a little bit more about what he taught you? Because you said he taught you everything about higher ed and study abroad, but like, was there anything that sticks out that made you go, oh, I really like that as a career path? Because I think, as you know, it's very different being an administrator of global programs versus a participant in these programs. And so was there something he said that made you go, oh, I think that could be really meaningful work? Or was it even that deep yet for you?
We're sitting in a pub, so you can only get so deep at a pub sometimes, but especially when
you can get super deep at a pub. Or you can get
super deep at a pub with your friends. But, I think it was pretty surfacey. I was really just in awe of the whole experience. And to know that there was this, it really felt for me, actually, coming again from a small town with really no career guidance, no academic guidance or anything. It felt like for the first time, someone pointed me towards a path. even though study abroad's been around for a long time, it still was fairly small as a profession back then.
Oh yeah.
And to have it opened up in such a way that he told me all about travel, but also the working with students. And I'd already been working with students as an undergrad. I was an orientation leader, I was a DJ, and I was the station manager at my radio station. So I'd already been fairly engaged in the student affairs side of things. And it was just another avenue of, I really kind of like this, working with students and working with this population. And he talked about the impact that you could have. And that was one reason he enjoyed being a resident director and leading programs. And then he went on to become a recruiter and different things, but he really just opened everything up. And, you know, you can go into international students and scholars, because, you know, there are all these international students. And I thought, oh yeah, I have tons of friends who are international students. Why didn't I ever ask them about their adventures coming to the US? Or, you know, he told me about admissions, he told me about recruitment and study abroad, obviously. And again, we didn't have a study abroad office at my school, so I didn't get to see that or model that. So then I really just learned everything from him in terms of what the options are. And so,
yeah, that's great.
And of course, it was pre-internet. So, or the internet was fairly small, not to give away my age here, but the internet was fairly small. And so I came back and was already moving to Colorado. So I went and just visited different schools to learn about their programs and talk to the professors and just pick the one that I felt like was going to best equip me to go into this field. So I didn't do a straight student affairs program. I wanted the broader higher ed administration option that I was able to do. So
I love that you were savvy enough to know that there was a difference. Like I
There's
went into it, I was like, oh, there's a difference, because I did student affairs and then took some electives in like the higher ed side with like financing and organization, org chart type of stuff. But I was so blind going into my grad program. We did our last episode. If you guys haven't listened to it yet, we talked about, Sam and I talked about grad school versus getting a job, but we talked a little bit about our various grad experiences and how, like, looking back, I'm like, I don't know how I got here, everybody. Like, it was such by accident that it all worked out, so to speak. One of the things I was going to mention too, and especially for those who are listening, who are on the job search, you know, side of things, is that if you've been trigger shy around reaching out for informational interviews, reaching out to connect with people, also think like, you know, when Jason was talking about like going all over Colorado to do informational interviews, he was driving to the place to do that. Or maybe you were doing them over the phone.
No, I drove and saw people in person.
Yeah. So I feel like also think about how you think about technology as your tool. And I know everybody's like sick of Zoom, but at the same time, like capitalize on the fact that you could do a lot of these, you know, if you are in an active job search right now, and really make sure that you're utilizing the tools that are available to you, because you could be having to drive all of these places. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, and then we'll move on to talk more about study abroad strategy, blah, blah, blah. But this is the part that I like. That's the fun part. One of the things we talk about inside of GPI, so my alumni will know this, we talk about, you know, cultivating your professional brand and understanding what you want that to be, but also understanding like what your brand maybe already is, or what it is like adjacent to the work you do. Like, what example I always give is Angie Manginelli, who I know you know and love. Like, I always knew her as like the, you know, road warrior / reentry person, alumni engagement type of things. But then also like as the like great, she was the photographer / oh my God, the word is lost on me right now. It's like at the tip of my tongue, but she did, oh my God, where you're like acting, but you don't know what you're going to say. What is the word?
Improv.
Improv. Oh my gosh. You guys, it's Monday morning. I am like not had all of my coffee yet. Yes. Improv. So she did like improv. And so I always just like gave her examples. Like, she's got this great professional brand, but she's also known for these other things. Anyway, I digress. All right, let's talk about study abroad. The lab that you're going to be teaching, I already said that he's going to be teaching the lab. We're doing it on May 20th live, but if you guys decide you want to join, you'll get access to the recordings, etc. But we are doing it on May 20th. So if you're listening to this in time, just go check it out at the website. So I want to know why you're excited about teaching the study abroad lab. And I know you're excited because we've already talked about it, but you know, you were like, oh, this is something I've really always wanted to do. What makes you excited about teaching this sort of intro to study abroad advising for new or, you know, career changers, etc.?
Yeah. So I think for me personally, having been an advisor, even though it was quite a while ago, I really feel like advisors are the key to making the whole operation go. And because they're the frontline workers essentially of study abroad, and they're the ones that are out there talking to students, hearing what the students' needs are, and being able to hopefully translate that back to what the needs of your office are, so that you're continually updating yourself as an office and as a field to what the student needs are. And so, but you know, being an advisor so much more than actually just talking to students as well. And I think that that's another thing that I'm excited to share as we talk in the lab of, you know, it's talking to students, yes, it's learning about advising principles and activities, but it's also being able to figure out, how do you talk to faculty, and how do you talk to parents, and how do you talk to providers and partners overseas? How do you do marketing and recruitment? How do you think about applications and what are important things there? How do you do event planning? How do you factor into risk management? I mean, there's so many different components, evaluation and assessment. And so really my hope is that by participating in the lab, coming away with an understanding of, and some tips and tools about all the different things that go into the fundamentals of advising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. I think when we initially talked about doing this together, one of the things I was really motivated to create this with you, but just to have this as a tool available to people. Because I remember when I got my job at the University of South Dakota, I was starting a study abroad office. They, like you in your undergrad, they just never had it. It was always like this random faculty sort of doing their own thing, which is great, but it was like never organized or structured or any real strategy around it. And so like they just like sat me at my desk and was like, go, like, create study abroad. And I wish there had been like a study abroad in a box kind of thing, you know, where it was like, here's your applications, here's what needs to go in the places. And and I always joke, but it's also true, is like one of the way I made a name for myself in the field is I was constantly on Sakusal asking questions. This is before they like limited the number of times you could post to the listserv, but like literally every Monday I'd be like, all right, question of the week. What do you ask about on your curriculum your credit transfer, you know, forms and things like that. All those types of things where I was just like, I've done this in a study abroad office before, but I'd never sort of understood why the thing already existed. Like I was sort of told, okay, here's the system, now implement it. And I was creating the system. So, and I'm a big, you know, my mentality is like, but why? Why are we doing certain things? So I wanted to make sure we were creating a system for students that was conducive and welcoming into the process and not adding a bunch of stuff just because, you know, it's been done that way. So I'm excited for us to sort of be able to go, okay, if we were starting from scratch, these are the things you need to know about what it looks like. And I think what I'm excited for you to bring to the table is like, you've seen such a broad, and both of us together, I think, like understanding of, you know, you work at a large university and you're, you know, before this, you're working at a large university that has its own challenges and positives and things that, and opportunities that it brings with it. I've worked at small liberal arts colleges that have their own challenges and opportunities that come with it. So I'm really excited about seeing the diversity of how different types of institutions might approach something, which is really exciting. And I think that faculty piece that you mentioned is going to be a fun conversation, because I think some people can come at it as a us against them mentality. Versus I think a better way to do it is like, you have like a whole like crew of potential collaborators that could only broaden your reach. You know, I think in your story, going back to you getting to study abroad because you randomly ran into this faculty member on the quad, you know, and he was, you know, with the study abroad advisor, if there had been a study abroad advisor, was the front line. Like you wouldn't have known to go on that if he hadn't presented the opportunity. And I just see faculty as like these amazing people we can collaborate with, because they are people. You got to remember that. And they're great people. They have such awesome experience and life experience and knowledge that is just, we have to have that as a key tool in the study abroad tool chest, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my own story, I've always felt like faculty are the champions of study abroad. And if you can hook them and get them on your side and give them the tools to talk to students, because even as a study abroad advisor, you're going to engage with a student a few times a year, but not super in depth, unfortunately. But faculty see these students 2 to 3 times a week, if not more. And so hooking them into this experience, not just for them to travel, but just for them to understand the benefits of a global education and infusing global themes into their courses and talking to students about study abroad has a huge impact on that success. And so being able to understand that is a key component of all of our work in global education. And yeah, I've always felt like faculty are the key. And so I've focused a huge part of my time on faculty-led programs throughout my career, expanding faculty-led programs, doing that, get out there to rev up the faculty to get them involved.
Yeah.
And help your programs grow. And, that's obviously as our fields evolved, that's been viewed negatively as we've done more of these shorter faculty-led programs. And just like now, virtual is going through that whole discussion of, is this real study abroad? Is this global education? Like, oh, come on, please just adapt, pivot and adapt. I'm hoping that we can talk about those sort of things and have some resources in place for our participants.
Yeah, we're definitely, I have that in our docket of things to like talk about virtual, because it's still such a movable feast too right now, where it's like, there's no like, this is how you do it. It's sort of like, this is the discussions we're having around it. Here are some different models that have been utilized and presented, but like nobody's researching this yet. I'm sure that's going to happen. And, people working on their PhDs, I'm sure, like chomping at the bit to be like, oh my gosh, I want a data set around that. But it's just so early stages. We don't really know, but we can sort of have that dialogue around what that future can look like. So it's going to be so exciting. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about, you've been running a study abroad office for a long time, but like over the last year, and for the situation that will not be named has obviously taken its toll across our field. And I say that, but I don't want to belittle the experience of professionals that it's been really challenging for, obviously students of the whole higher ed situation. But, I know that it's got to be a unique experience. Do you want to share a little bit about what was it like in the early days for you in your office? Let's just like break it down. Like, what was the conversation you were having internally that you are welcome to share? And then, with even in your colleagues, like, I don't know if there's like a secret SEC study abroad director WhatsApp group or something, which would be awesome. But like, what was the conversation and things happening in those early days?
Yeah, the last year's been overwhelmingly challenging, obviously. So we'll start there. It was difficult personally and professionally. We've lost people both in our work. We've lost friends and colleagues, both people losing their jobs. Our field's been decimated, but I know that many of us have lost friends and loved ones to the pandemic. And so it's been such a challenge. The entire year has just been this roller coaster of emotions. I wrote to somebody the other day because we canceled the program, and both the students and our host organization abroad were so upset. And I said, I really feel you. I have been crushing people's dreams for the last year and on so many different levels. And so even my partner who leads study abroad programs, I canceled her program. Her program got canceled last year. And it was so upsetting to see that as a fact, what the effect it was on the faculty members, what effect it had on our students, the effect that it had on our staff. And so the biggest thing has been just the biggest change has been the overwhelmingly constant focus on risk management and trying to read and plan for everything without a crystal ball. The amazing level of uncertainty and just trying to plan through day by day of how we're going to move forward. And every office handles it differently. Every office has their own risk tolerance. I'm really lucky enough to have some amazing colleagues on my campus who got together and said, okay, we have a travel ban in place that initially shut down everything, but let's explore ways to move this forward and to try to resuming global education and sending students abroad. And that has been an amazing experience, because the conversations that we've had, I think, have made our efforts stronger in terms of how do we deal with risk management broadly. The tools that we've created, both adapted from other people, but enhanced and added to on our own, really have, I think, put us in an amazing place. And we've been able to successfully send students abroad because of those things. Starting last fall, it was really small. We had, I think, 10 students last fall. And then we had about 60 last spring, or this current spring semester. And then we'll have about 150 this summer. In half an hour, I'm going to make my pitch to our Vice Provost of Global Affairs to let us send students abroad this fall. And it'll be even bigger cohort. And so we're slowly trying to build things back following the standards, by utilizing best practices. And so I think that's been the biggest benefit, is that we've been able to really dig into what makes programs successful and what makes them safe, and how do we adapt to different things. I think the other big keys have been just being able to talk things through with your staff and let them understand where you're coming from and why decisions are being made, and letting them feel like they have a voice as well to share their concerns and frustrations and their disappointment and anger has been really difficult and challenging. And having to do it in this venue of Zoom, as we all disappeared from campuses, has also been really hard. And but I think we've adapted and grown, and hopefully we're getting towards a place that is a little bit more hopeful as a field, but also in my staff and my office. I think that's where we're getting through. For a while, the word pivot was everything. Like, okay, what are we pivoting to today? What's the pivot today?
Yeah.
And hopefully we're getting past that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so, I've talked about this a few times, but I found it so fascinating over the past year to watch how the way that, especially in the entrepreneurial realm, the way I feel like I've operated in that realm for a while, and then to see this other realm that I operate in, international ed, start actually utilizing strategies and even language that I'm like, oh, like pivot and those types of remote learning, remote team building, like all these things that utilizing technology to like enhance the work that we do, as opposed to thinking of it as like the killer of the work that we do. There are so many negatives, but if there is any kind of positive, I think that's come out of this, is that it's shown us as a field that there are so many ways to slice and dice the work that we do, but also the paths that we take forward to get to the outcomes that we want. There's just, before I think we thought they were like one or two paths, right? Mm-hmm. Now I feel like it's opened up, and there's maybe now 3 or 4 or 5 paths to getting those same outcomes. So that to me is a positive. I think it sucks that we had to have such a negative side to that coin. Yeah. And then I think for me, like you talking about like talking to the team and talking to the staff about what, why decisions are being made that are very, logistical in nature and policy driven, and based on like, we think this is going to happen, so here's the decision that we're making. I know that is super challenging, but I also just it made me think about like 19-year-old or whatever, 20-year-old Jason, back in the day. Like I think about the kid last year, the young person who was like going to get to go abroad for the first time. They're from like rural North Carolina, and it was like going to be their chance to kind of see something and get out. And then all of a sudden it was canceled, obviously. And I just think like, that's so incredibly sad. I'm of two minds, obviously. Like I'm like you, like I'm older now. So I know that like, that's not going to be their only opportunity, but we also know too, and also based on research, that like that first time is so powerful to being like the kickstart to further intercultural learning and exploration. And so it is just like incredibly sad. And so I think especially in the Q&A during the lab, it's definitely something I think will be an interesting conversation to talk about, like how to sort of work with students who've had this pinnacle kind of experience canceled or dashed in some way that is like, for them in their life right now, based on what they've done so far, is like a huge setback. I just feel for all those young people who it
Yeah,
really, truly
absolutely.
was like devastating. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. And I know you're going to have to go soon because you got to prep for this big pitch meeting you've got, which good luck with you for that. So let's end on like a high note. Like where do you think the future of international education is? Is there like a program model or structure you think is going to take off? Do you think enrollments are going to spike? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think professionally, are there going to be more jobs? Like what's going to happen? Give out your crystal ball.
That's right. I think for me, I'm super hopeful about our future in global education. And I think that that's the key. I've always been, I worked in service learning for a while during my career. I've done internships and all these different sort of what were considered the fringe of study abroad. Mm. And so I've always felt that study abroad's more than just student mobility. And I think that the pandemic has really demonstrated that to us, and that there are so many more ways that we need to engage with students to provide them these global experiences. And so that's something that we're really going to be looking to over the next 6 months to a year. But I think our field will have to come to that as well. Our chancellor has a goal of 50% of students study abroad, but 100% of students have a global experience. And so the pandemic has really showed us through virtual internships, virtual education, COIL courses, that we can reach that other 50% and provide them with opportunities like that, that are maybe not for credit, maybe they're virtual, remote, or they become a stepping stone to a study abroad experience. But that's really what I'm hoping for, is that we broaden our scope as a field beyond just traditional study abroad. And our field's done that so many times. It used to be junior year abroad, and then it was a semester abroad, and then it's summer faculty leds, and now we're in this new place. And I think our field is so adaptable, and I think that's my hope, is that we'll just continue to expand and grow and beyond our limited definitions. And I think that in turn will lead us to further growth. I hope that there's going to be a ton of pent up energy after students have spent a year plus in their parents' basements watching Zoom classes, that they're all going to want to go abroad or participate in some sort of global experience, which I think will in turn lead to new jobs and help us to build back, taking from the Biden playbook, build back better.
Yeah. There you go. I love it. That's my big prediction, is I think that we're going to see probably realistically, probably 2022, but I think we're going to see a massive spike, even maybe that surpasses what happened before the pandemic, at least for a little while, because I think that same reason of all the students who, the NSC survey, thinking about that 75% student population who was always I'm pretty sure I'm going to study abroad, but didn't. Now they're oh shit. I was can I curse on my own podcast?
It's your own podcast.
But they're oh crap. I definitely have to participate in this. Before it was sort of a nice to have. Now it's like you said, I'm antsy. I got to get out of here. But I think, as you said, I think students are going to be I got to get out of here, but study abroad in the traditional sense is going to be one of so many things that they explore when they say, I got to get out of here. And so I think we as professionals be ready and willing to be really open to what that can look like for them, and helping facilitate and find them help them discover opportunities that might have been before. We might've been well, that's outside of what we consider study abroad. I also think there's this awesome opportunity now for that post-college age group. I mean, we might call it a gap year, but even outside of gap year, I think programmatic models that serve young people that are not credit bearing, that are not also come with the cost of all the credit and academia bureaucracy that comes with that people want these structured, meaningful experiences, but maybe they missed their shot because they were a junior or senior in college, or they're I want to just get college done and then have this kind of experience post college. So it's still gap year, but I think in that more structured opportunity is there. So listen up, study abroad companies, if you're looking for new revenue streams, I think that's an opportunity. We're going to be doing that at my company, Brazenest. I'm working on a whole litany of programs that are targeted for post
awesome.
college age groups that are all about upskilling, but having a really meaningful structured program abroad that has nothing to do with your university. So I think there's opportunity there. Yeah. Okay. So I know you got to go, and I'm just going to tell everybody to go connect with you on LinkedIn, because I know you're over there. And everybody, if you want to learn more from Jason in a more structured experience in our Study Abroad Advising and Management Lab, we're going to be teaching it live on May 20th. So go to insidestudyabroad.com/labs to learn more about that. And we would love to have you join us and engage in this conversation.
Absolutely.
There'll be a Q&A at the end. So we'll answer all your questions, and hopefully you'll learn a lot about the future of study abroad advising and how that whole world works.
Excellent.
Thank you, Jason. Have a good luck on your meeting. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you next time.
Thanks. Take care. See you.